monthly retrospective for Good Ribbit Productions, the company behind the Notorious Frogland. We're here today to review our progress, discuss the past month of development, and touch on some of the plannings for the upcoming months. In this meeting, we're going to take a look at the project as a whole, discuss any challenges we've encountered, and identify areas that we think we need to improve. We're also going to be discussing our plans for the future, project brainstorming, new ideas with our community to make sure we're building upon our success. And as always, we want to thank you just so much for joining us today. We look forward to hearing your thoughts and feedbacks on everything that we're going to go through today. So again, a quick catch up for any new watchers here. We have been active in the space now for nearly 2 years. We achieved progress towards our goals of our communities every step of the way. And just as a quick reminder, we launched the 10,000 Notorious Frogs with the promise of Buy Frog, Get Land. This was in about mid-2021. By mid-2022, we delivered on that promise with each frog getting their land, an LSD or a land synthesis device, the mean in which all frogs will claim ownership of different plots of land, or lily pads as we call them, in Frogland, as well as be able to harvest their resources, interact with the land, encrypt and decrypt messages, and just so much more that we can't wait for you to find out about. They are riddled with Easter eggs, let's say the least. Of course, with your frog, you had access to the vertical slice that we launched at the end of 2021, the 3D world that we call the Dragonfly Social Club, a NFT viewing gallery, a social engagement space, and a beautifully rich world filled with Easter eggs that have been co-created by members of our community. And of course, what we have now been working on is the first of many, many games that we're excited to start talking about, something that we call Total Recall. Very much embracing this notion of co-development. We didn't want to just make a game and push it out and hope you liked it, not when we have such an amazing community that we can run ideas past. So we're doing something fairly radical insofar as we're opening up a pre-release of the game or we have opened up a pre-release of the game to our frog holders on a staging site. As far as I'm aware, no one's done this before, where you can now come to a different website. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the link live, but if you have a frog, you should be able to find it, and be able to play a whole bunch of stuff and see the developments as and when we push it out. So a lot of the stuff you're going to see at the same time I end up seeing it, which is really quite interesting. It allows us to now start getting true, genuine feedback from people on what we can do to improve this game and what we can do to, I don't know, tweak it, change it, adjust it to make it a more entertaining experience for people, not only within Frogland, but also to the wider NFT space. Because this is going to be a game that will be playable on Web3 enabled browsers, but ultimately it's also going to be rolled out to mobile platforms such as your Google Play Store and your iOS Store as a sort of a free-to-play game with the view that we'll be able to get a wider reach of audiences of people who are looking to have some froggy fun. So that being said, if you have not had a chance to play Total Recall, but you do have a frog, hop into the Discord, check out the holders channel, and you'll be able to get some details. If you do not yet have a frog, I would urge you to check out Total Recall. You may be lucky enough to get a little screen share about it shortly, so that you can start playing games and racking up leaderboards and doing a whole bunch of fun stuff that will get Froggy Digital to dig into from a tech side of just exactly what you can do with these many games. So that being said, our community, as awesome as they are, we are a rich and compelling world which is filled with quests and puzzles and lore, and most importantly, fun. Because of course, we've seen a lot of games that have been coming out recently that are Web3 games built by Web3 developers as opposed to video games built by video game developers. So finding that fine line between the two is always a tricky thing. And I think with these games that we're going to be showcasing over the course of this year, we're going to be showcasing different ways of having fun while also leveraging blockchain technology at the back end. So that being said, I would love to summarize over and pass over to Andy for a little bit of a catch up on a few other interesting things that are happening in Frogland.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Snoop. So I kind of wanted to kick things off with a little bit of the background and kind of some explanation on Total Recall and why we're doing things the way we are, some of the lore and history behind it, and some of the ways that we are utilizing this development process to continue to push forward the product development and the building out and co-creation of our world. And so I'm actually going to kick things off by doing a little screen share of the Total Recall trailer. So bear with me for one moment here. There we go.
In the days of ancient Egypt, were immortal. They came from above. They abducted you for your genetic code, your proto-acids. You must escape. Sometimes you have to die your way out.
There we go.
Nice.
I just love that trailer. I think it's so cool. So that teaser comes from the magical frog hands of Bugs and Shrimp, and kind of starts to lay some of the groundwork in the history behind the Notorious frogs and how they came to be in Frogland, and for that matter, how they became notorious to begin with. So some of the background here, we're kind of setting up the world and the history of where everything was basically in the real world, like pre-mint timeline. So how did the frogs get from Earth into New Pangea? How did they turn from the kind of funky looking tree frogs that we see in the origin story video and obviously on Earth currently? And how did they transform into these humanoid, walking, talking, notorious creatures with the jelly skin and all of the really cool traits that we know and love, and the frogs that we know and love. And so, kind of by setting all of this history up, it gives a little bit more of that explanation and kind of helps set the stage for community creation and community development around that kind of narrative backbone that we can lay out. And so Total Recall is the first Sisyphean mission in a series of memories extracted from the genetic material of the Notorious frogs. So basically acting as an onboarding tutorial, these missions help set Frogland's stage and tell the story of the immortal tree frogs of ancient times and how they were abducted and experimented on by the ultra-terrestrials, and then how the intrepid 10K Notorious frogs escaped that abduction and torture cycle and became notorious. So the ultra-terrestrials harvest frog proto-acid and use that to fuse their DNA, fuse our frog DNA with essence chemistry, hoping to unlock the secret to immortality, no matter how many dead frogs it takes. So something broke that cycle of abduction and torture by the extraterrestrials, and the question is what and why. As the frogs race against a dwindling immortality from these experiments, from harvesting the proto-acids from the frogs, the goal is to collect the proto-acids again and escape the spaceship. And maybe with that, we'll be able to survive and not have to reincarnate every time. So Frogland seems at least like an oasis of safety, but is it? Dun dun
I like it. Ultra terrestrials. I mean, hats off to whoever came up with that one.
Yeah, it's a very compelling storyline. I think it's going to be very, very fun. And so, kind of the way that we've built out this game and the way that we've decided to launch it as well, both to kind of help continue this creative development process and co-creation with our community, is to launch it, first of all, much sooner in the process than traditional game dev studios. I think we touched on that a little bit in the last town hall. But also by kind of segmenting out the launch. So we're releasing parts of it in a more quick pattern than what would ordinarily just kind of wait for a single big product launch at the end of like a year-long build cycle or something like that, or longer probably. And so by kind of splitting all of this up and getting it out in several different pieces, we can both kind of help teach the community members and teach new users how everything works, and then also make sure that we're getting feedback and talking with the community and seeing what you guys like and what you guys don't like, as well as getting bugs identified and fixed, making sure a lot of like the balance is right on the economics of it, and making sure that it's not, we don't launch something that ends up kind of being a little bit of a flop for whatever reason. And so being able to do that has kind of allowed us to get some more of that tuning done and create something that's at least by all reports thus far been a blast to play. So I think some of the kind of key points we want to hit here for the current launch, as Snoop said, it'll go to a public launch with a free-to-play version of it at a future point. That'll probably be once things are closer to like done, officially done. So for now, you have to own a Frog to play. Basically, just go to our staging wallet, say connect your Frog wallet inside a read-only transaction. Everything here is still under dev, so like it's going to be under dev for quite some time. So things are going to move, things will break. There will be bugs that pop up and then go away, and then maybe they come back again, and that's all fine. There are feedback forums posted in the message board channel in our Discord, and obviously Discord has access to the entire Frog team, and so you can ping us and go back and forth about the things that you're seeing, any ideas that you have, or anything that you like about it or don't like. And now for the really interesting and cool part, the gold hexagonal coins that you guys saw in the trailer. Those are proto-acids. Those are the pieces of our DNA that we are looking to collect in our efforts to escape the spaceship. So these are craftable ERC 1155 NFTs. They can only be collected in Total Recall, at least for now. We're open to the possibility of them needing to be coming from elsewhere later on, but for now, only in Total Recall. And these end up just directly minting to your wallet at the end of your game session, and no cost to the players. They just show up there, and they're currently on Polygon testnet, just making sure everything works the way it's supposed to. Everything's balanced correctly, no bugs and everything, and we will be moving it onto mainnet here shortly, which I think Froggy Digital should be able to tell you guys a little bit more about all that.
Are you passing it over to me now?
I am passing it to you, yes.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, Horny the Toad just called me out for having resting frog face. Apparently, I look mad. I'm not. That's just my face. That's how I look. Can't help it. Yeah, it's been a very exciting month, I think, right? At least for me. Launching products is always a challenge, a lot of sleepless nights and everything. But it's been awesome seeing all the feedback coming in, positive and negative. Most of it positive, which has been awesome for us as a team. It seems like people are really liking the game. They're having a good time playing it. The stats back that up too. I don't remember off the top of my head, but all the usual suspects seem to be playing every day and having a good time, which is amazing because that, it not only is it rewarding for us just to have built something that people like, but it does also help us, build it for scale to make sure that this is ready to go out to a wider audience, right? So yeah, I mean, as you can see, this product also is like an inflection point of a lot of different themes that have been going on in Frogland that we've been talking about for the past year or so. And some of those being, the Web3 based items, crafting, collection of items, things like that, in-game assets, art, story, lore. Lolly already mentioned, co-creation, getting feedback and everything. And so it's been pretty awesome to, be living what we've been talking about for so long, right? And so this is still just it's still a very early step, but I'm pretty over the moon despite my shitty look on my face for how this is coming together and the excitement that's happening in the community. And so for now, for the next month or so, we're focused primarily on things like bug fixes, incorporating feedback. There's been a lot of really, really great things that have come in to talk about, different types of features and things that can come into the game that can improve it. And so a certain amount of those are going to get implemented. But, I think what's important here too is like, since we're working out in the open, you guys are seeing this stuff happen as it happens, and so we have a pretty big update that is just about ready to go out that fixes a few basic things. And make some changes to some of the balance of the game. And then we have another follow-on one that's going to come up with what we're calling a production rollout, right? that is going to add a few things that we think are going to, again, further help balance the game a little bit. I think you're going to like them, but we're going to save that for the surprise. And so those types of things that we're working on right now, just like, incremental changes, balancing the mechanics, tightening things up, making sure that we don't run out of runway. Like, I think a couple of people ended up figuring out that there's only like so many lanes in the game, and we had a number roll over. Like, that's a bug. It's supposed to go for forever. Things like that have been super helpful, because it would have taken us forever to find those in testing it ourselves, right? And so over the course of the next few weeks, we're looking to get a couple of updates into that staging website that you guys have access to now. And then we're also looking to roll out a version of this into what we'll call mainnet, but really, the tokens are going to end up being on layer 2, probably Arbitrum, and the game in a more stabilized form will end up going onto the standard Frogland.io website. That's still going to be token gated for now for Frog holders while we continue to work through some of the issues. And then at a certain point when we're ready, probably more than a month from now, we're going to open that up and allow anyone to play. And the way that we're going to do that is we have a number of frogs that are sitting in the treasury that are, we're going to consider those community frogs, right? And so we think that this is an interesting way to allow people to come and play and experience the ecosystem by playing with effectively community frogs, right? Frogs that are owned by the organization, and then they can experience the world for themselves, collect some tokens, participate, and then make a decision whether or not they want to come and join us and join our community, right? So we're still working out some of the specific details around that. We want to make sure that things are again, well balanced and fair, and incentivizing people to take the leap, so to speak, into our world at their own pace and enjoy themselves while they're here, and find a cool home. So with that type of stuff, those technical features, one of the main themes that we're really looking to focus on next, now that we have a game that's fun and has a little bit of traction, is distribution, marketing, getting the word out there that this thing is here and it exists, and people are enjoying it, and see if we can really try to get some more people in here, right? And so in support of that, we've also got an update to the website that's been in the works for a while. There's got a few new features on it, such as gallery views for our NFTs, other NFTs, things like that. And then there's a profile section that we've been working on as well. And our intention is to add website features and Discord features that allow people to continue to interact with this world, right? So I think a lot of people here are currently used to the Discord economy that we have that was set up very early in the project. We've also been working on custom Discord integrations that talks to everything else that we have. And the first feature I think that we're going to roll out as part of that with our custom bot is going to be accessing the leaderboards directly in Discord, right? And so this is, if you've been involved with the project for a while, we've always been talking about how we see the metaverse as like a way to integrate all of these different things into a unified experience. And so we're trying to tell this story around being able to play games, text-based games in Discord, being able to play games on the browser, and then being able to share that state and experience throughout different social media platforms, other gaming platforms, and then of course, on our site and all of our first-party things that we're building too. So I think that's pretty exciting for me personally, because that opens up a lot of doors for us to be able to continue to follow this model where Discord and the staging website are, they're open and accessible and available for people who are in the community who want to play with that, who want to help us do things and test things and whatnot, and are willing to accept that certain things might break. And then we have a more curated, better polished experience through the primary website, where a lot of those same features are enabled. You can still check the leaderboards on the website, and you can still check the leaderboards in Discord. You can also do things like crafting, access stores, and some of these other features that we already have. Those things are going to be migrating into this new bot that ends up being connected to all of our authentication and blockchain infrastructure that we already have. And so we're going to start to see that Discord economy, the usage of it, to start to migrate into this new bot. And that new bot is connected to all the same things that show up in the world itself, right? So the tokens that you're collecting by playing Crossy Toad, or I'm sorry, Total Recall, I keep calling it by its code name, are just tied into the ecosystem, and you can access those through whatever front end experience you want. That being Discord we have right now, website, the game experiences, and then as we add things like mobile applications or integrations with say Twitter or Reddit or something else. All of that is connected to the same kind of cohesive segment. And of course, because we're using, Ethereum under the hood for a lot of this stuff, that means that it plugs into all the other tools that are out there and can be picked up by other ecosystems and things like that. So that's a pretty good summary of some of the stuff that we have in the works right now that's pretty close to being finished. We're looking to ship some of that stuff over the course of the next month. I think, like I said, website update, at least some components to it, migrating Total Recall over onto most likely Arbitrum, and in that process, adding a little bit of balance to the game, and then a Discord bot that supports interacting with the game in a few different ways. One of which being reading data like leaderboards, and another being enabling things like some of the crafting things that we've been talking about recently, right? So yeah, that's a pretty good state of affairs, lay of the land of where things are right now. Was there anything else that you guys did I miss anything? Anything else you think needs mentioning specifically?
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head there. There's a lot to take in. So good thing we've got to play at half speed on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I talked fast.
No, but I gotta say it's been a fucking great month. I mean, we haven't even touched on NFT LA or the Outer Edge and NFT NYC that's coming up soon as well. I mean, there is so much going on. It's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. The NFT, the Outer Edge event was fantastic. I think there's 3,000 people here this year. There's about 3,700 people last year held at the LA Convention Center, and managed to show Total Recall off to a few frog holders. So we're getting them on the leaderboard. So if you haven't yet had a chance to check out the leaderboard, I'm in awe at some of the scores that some of these frog holders are managing to get. I think Fly Swatter was at the top last time I checked. I don't know if he's still reigning supreme, but it's a great game. Even if you're not much of a gamer, definitely give it a go.
Well, something that was interesting here too was I think the number one piece of feedback that we received from people is they want to be able to play it on a phone, right? Mm-hmm. Internally, and we had always kind of envisioned this as being a mobile game. It's based on a mobile game, and so there's this philosophical concept that we've been working on internally of incentivizing the testing and playing that's happening now through a token-based economy that's related to this wider crypto metaverse as a whole, and then putting out versions of this that are going to be compliant with the App Store that we think that we can get through, so that might end up meaning, as an example, that the version that is deployed into the Apple App Store might not necessarily be connected to NFTs, right? But it does reach a wider audience, right? So we're still working through some of the technical stuff on that side, and we're going to see what we can get away with, of course. But Apple's pretty stringent about how that stuff works. But one thing that I think is really useful in how we have structured this so far is that because the tokens are only earned and there's really no way to purchase them, you have to play. I'm hoping that that's going to, check the box for them, and they're going to allow us to keep the infrastructure that we have right now. So we're experimenting with these things. We see distribution as the primary way to be able to get new users in here and to get them to start playing the games, and then reach a wider audience of people who, are probably more traditional gamers, even casual gamers who might not necessarily have NFTs or care about them. And, we're trying to take this focus of say, hey, this is just a really fun game that's enjoyable, play it. And, if you want the tokens, you've accrued them and they're here. And if you don't want them, then that's okay too, right? So we want to just make sure that we're leading with fun, we're leading with story, we're leading with creativity, and we're building things that people enjoy as products, just because because they enjoy being here and spending time, and not necessarily because it's driven purely by the blockchain infrastructure. So I know that's a little bit different than the way most projects have approached things in the past, but we do think that this is ultimately where the rest of the industry is going to start leading to, and where they're going to start going. And ultimately what's going to start to change some of that narrative, that stigma around using this technology that you see in the wider audiences, right? And because there's no, in a certain sense, people aren't necessarily wrong to be skeptical of this stuff, because there's just so many bad examples out there, but there's also so many good ones, right? And so, like, being able to highlight that and demonstrate that through the actual products that we develop, I think is the most powerful thing that we can do, rather than just necessarily telling people. So it's like, hey, let's build something fun. Let's use tokens and blockchain infrastructure for what they're really good for, and then let's put them in the hands of people and see if they're having a good time, right?
Yeah. It's really well put, because again, the road to mass adoption, we know gaming is going to be that catalyst. The gamers are not necessarily here yet. A lot of us are gamers, but the true gaming community have not yet moved into this space. What will bring them here is fun. They don't care about tokens. They don't care about Web3. They don't care about wallets. They're not going to be taught to use MetaMask. What they will do, however, is play a fun game. And if there's Web3 in the back end, fantastic. I mean, they will probably never know what Arbitrum is. But that being said, I could probably use a little reminder myself. So, Matt, what would you, in a nutshell, go on? What's Arbitrum for those people who may want to know the benefits?
Sure. So it's a layer 2, right? Specifically, it's an optimistic rollup. There's a couple of different types of technology that Ethereum is using for scaling. Mostly centered around rollups, optimistic and zero knowledge being the two primary ones. Don't worry about the jargon particularly. What this just means is that this is a network that inherits its connection and security to the main Ethereum network, right? And all the fun and complicated math that's under the hood guarantees that that's true, so that you don't have to trust anyone else, right? Obviously, there's some edge cases there, and if you want to talk more about it, I'll be in Gen Chat, happy to fill everybody in. But Arbitrum, is one of several larger networks that are in the growth phase of expanding, and they've got some good support. They've got some good support with some other friends of ours. Some game investments that they're making in gaming infrastructure and things like that. So. It's a good place for us to experiment with, but of course, like, we're not necessarily trying to tie everything into one specific network, right? We've got our frogs and the LSDs are on mainnet, right? And we think that Ethereum is a very important network for all of this, but it's very expensive and difficult to transact. So by putting assets onto Arbitrum, we can still inherit the Ethereum infrastructure and ecosystem, but we can, be able to do things like cover gas fees for people when they want to, mint out, features inside of a game, or redeem items and things like that. So cost is a primary driving factor, scalability, but block space is another big one. And then there are a few other pieces of technology that are being developed in these ecosystems, like the concept of a layer 3, for example, which can be an app-specific chain. There's some really cool stuff that we can do that will, as an example, we can, spin up a game or a particular state of a game, run a tournament, operate that for a couple of weeks, and then spin it back down and post all the results back out onto mainnet or onto the layer 2. And then we can, further reduce our costs and have, this kind of sliding bar between scalability and trust that, we can make some very kind of concerted decisions around how our ecosystem works based on this technology, right? And so, I don't know. I mean, that's basically a summary of how it works and how we use it. There are some limitations, of course. It's still pretty early, so bridging things back into the main Ethereum ecosystem takes a little while. But there's a lot of cool stuff out there that I think, when you look at this from the perspective of a business like ours, we can start to gain efficiency and economy of scale from using this technology rather than having to maintain all of this centralized server infrastructure ourselves. So in a certain sense, it reduces cost, it increases reliability and resiliency. And then, as we move forward with the project and with the ecosystem, the centralized vectors of trust around, like us operating all of this stuff start to disappear as we start to build more with these tools. So
this is sort of how we're able to airdrop people what they've collected every time they play a game without sort of having to pay fees or them having to pay fees or do any of that fiddliness. It's just play and receive.
Yeah, and it's just, ETH mainnet's pretty expensive, so it's difficult to have thousands of transactions. It's interesting that example, right? So like this is a really good example of something that we learned from releasing this application out and testing it on the testnet first, which was that piece of feedback that we've received is most people have said that they don't necessarily need to receive all of those items at the very end of the playing session. They'd be happy with a claim button, right? And so, like, by having a claim button, excuse me, on the website, that's going to further be able to reduce our costs, because we won't just be minting, if you play 5 sessions, we're sending 5 transactions right now, and adding that piece of work in there so that you can play, all day, or, you play for an hour or whatever. And then whenever you're ready to claim, you just go and claim. And if you want to claim after every game, you can do that too. But putting that in the hands of the user, when we were building this out, that was something that we talked about, and we decided to ship without it because we said, wait, let's get, before speculating on whether or not we think that this is what people want, let's just put it out in its current form and see how it plays and see if people like it, right? And so that piece of feedback came back, and it was like, yep, here's the community saying that they want us to build this thing that we talked about building. And so that just validated that it's worth it for us to spend the effort to actually build that particular piece. So when we go onto Arbitrum, before we go onto Arbitrum, actually, you'll see an update where the tokens that you're accruing will continue to accrue in a Web 2 way, similar to the way the Discord economy works. And then when you want to claim, that's a mint process that'll mint that stuff out, right? And so it's up to you. If you care about the blockchain stuff, and I think most of the people who are listening here do, then you have control over that rather than us just arbitrarily having control over it.
And is that tied to the frog or to the wallet? What if I were to sell a frog?
To the wallets for now. So that's a great question. There are certain parts of the economy that will be tied to the frog or the LSD, and then there are certain parts of the economy that are tied to the user, right? And so in this particular case, the act of doing this collection, we felt that this should accrue to the user because of this use case where we want, new people to come in and to play with the community frogs, but still be able to earn something, right? And so in this case, they're still collecting an item in the game that can be redeemed. And, we think that that's a really good first experiment here to see if we can start to get conversions over new users who come to the website, like what they see, decide to play the game, earn a few tokens from playing the game, and then go and, buy a frog off the secondary and continue playing, right? Like that's a strong story that we want to tell.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, economy is I'm sorry, I just keep talking. But as if it's not clear, like economy is a major focus of one of the things that we're working on right now. Also in the background, we're focused very, very heavily on lore. The past year and a half or so has really produced a lot of awesome content out of the community, and it's been a challenge at times to be able to fit all of that together into a cohesive storyline that makes sense, and to provide a skeleton or a backbone for people. And this is something that we've been working on for the past few months, is trying to bring some cohesion to all of this. And like, I'm happy to say, I feel like we have a really good answer for that. We have a really good answer for how all of these different, as we're calling them now, missions, well, they used to be mini games. That name probably still needs a little bit of work, but these ideas of like being able to experience the life of the frog and the story of the frog, and be able to experience the world through the products themselves is pretty exciting, because we were a year ago when when we ran the first FRPG and the most wanted lists and things like that, we were really just trying to capture all that data, right? And this thing has grown into a life of itself, where it has its own kind of core to it, that's bigger than anything that we had created ourselves, and like that was pretty awesome. So there's going to be a lot more information around that coming out. Unfortunately, it's there's a lot in there, right? And so it's like, how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So I think what's fair to say is that everything that we're doing is trying to be expressed through the story and the lore that's being created by us and the community, right? And so we're going to start to see, I think, a lot more cohesion come together around that over the course of the next few months, as the stories that we're telling about the hero's journey, basically, of these different frogs as they came to be in this world and how they exist now, and unifying those things to try to explain what's happened in both past and future history as to why all these things have happened, and expressing all of that through products is going to make for a very compelling environment.
Very much so. Yeah, I mean, seeing this all get stitched together is it's incredibly satisfying. I'm not gonna lie. I like
right?
Yeah, it's what's going to get rolled out over the not too distant future, I think, is going to put a smile on a lot of people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
I've included.
Well, we're certainly having fun building it. So.
And so you guys are off to NFT NYC soon enough, aren't you?
Yeah, we're gonna head up to NFT NYC, which is I think April 12th or 13th or something like that. We're going to partner up with Rare Pizzas. They're throwing a party that Thursday for anyone who's in town. I won't spill the beans on the party, but it's going to be epic. And then just staying engaged with the industry. It's like one of these things you got to be in the room or you're not there. You know what I mean? So spreading the word. With that little event, I think. Shrimp is in Japan right now, getting some much needed family time for the next week or so. And then I think you said you're heading over to the other side of Europe too, right?
Europe, God, you Americans, honestly, we're the Maldives, sort of other end of the world, all the way on the other side. So we are, heading off to an old school friend's wedding. I actually introduced him to his better half. So looking forward to it. I haven't seen him for quite a few years, and he's got a little one too. So it's going to be a nice little reunion. It should be a good few days. But yeah, and I got to say, I mean, NFT, you're talking more about spreading the word of Frog. I think I may as well just set a little point out that I failed miserably at getting old William Shatner to give me a Ribbit on camera. I tried. I was in the speaking room and sort of because I was giving a talk about the metaverse and everything, and so I had my little backstage thing, and I was waiting for him to come back, and he got back, and I sort of jumped on him as much as I could in a friendly way. But yeah, he was having none of it, unfortunately. So that was one mission I was trying to get done that I failed at, unfortunately. But otherwise, it was a great event, and I spent a long time with the usual Frogland crew. The Gabe Weiss, Ali Sabets, Keith Botha was there. We saw Z Novak, we saw Manny Links, we saw. Oh crikey, Emily Lazar. It was all the usual suspects, and it was good to see everyone there again, all creating and still being active in the space. It was a fun show. So unfortunately, I won't be able to do NFT NYC, but I'll be there. I'll be there in spirit at least. Lovely. So I think really that's pretty much everything that we've touched on. I think that's a busy month that we've been having, and I know we have a very busy few weeks ahead of us. But that being said, unless there's any other questions that have been posed inside the Discord, Lolly, any pressing questions we may have from the community while we have everyone here?
Yeah, I actually have I have a good one. It's been brought up, I think, a couple times this morning. There were some questions about how we're handling deaths in the metaverse, because obviously, like, our characters are NFTs, and going around burning people's NFTs is not a great not a great look. And so I wanted to touch on a little bit of that before I hand it over to Matt for the Froggy Digital for the blockchain side of things. But kind of that's part of why we're experimenting and talking about immortality and handling it in the way that we are with like the reincarnation during Total Recall. The reason why we're calling them missions, and kind of putting the emphasis on the memories that are extracted kind of from like the genetic material of the frogs, and the phrase Sisyphean especially. Sisyphus was a Greek hero or a founder or something, and he ended up being he cheated death at some point in his life, and as punishment, Hades had him rolling a boulder up a mountain for eternity, basically. So doing this pointless task that he had to repeat kind of over and over and over, despite it never actually kind of getting him anywhere. And kind of with that in mind, that's kind of the way that we're framing, like the way that you go through Total Recall, where you are trying to get somewhere, you're trying to escape the alien spaceship, you're trying to get out, and if you don't, you just start over again. And that kind of consistency of like, we're not like obviously burning your NFTs when you die in Total Recall, and being able to kind of have that focused around the fact that there's something with your immortality that the aliens, the ultra-terrestrials want. And if you can hold on to that, and if you can maintain that, then you'll end up kind of surviving, making it into one of the 10,000 frogs who survived, as opposed to one of the numerous dead frogs that Bug has killed, who did not make it off an alien spaceship. And then Froggy Digital, you can kind of talk to more of the.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a concern, since the very beginning, right? And so we had set up the narrative, the initial narrative around this concept to begin with, right? The immortal frogs of Earth, and then the first thing that we did was, the story of Jimmy the Knee was kill a frog, right? Was to intentionally start to explore exactly what this means. And so, death in this world, death in these worlds in a certain sense is impermanent in a sense, and having that story there, I think is definitely helping me understand how we can implement that in games, right? And so, each game experience is just an expression of a part of this world, a part of this story, and death is a doorway in a certain sense, and in some cases you might even need to die in order to experience other things. And so these are some pretty deep concepts on a philosophical level, but there is how do I put this, there's a certain mythology emerging around it in our world that allows us to track those events as game state or even experience in a certain case, right? Like it might even end up being that the number of times that you die has meaning, but it's not actually doing anything with these assets that are owned by people, right? And so we have some ways where we can make events for keeps, right? So like as an example, depositing your assets into a particular contract for say like a tournament or something, but those things are still a little bit of ways off because they need to make sense for the community, they need to make sense from a token perspective, and they need to make sense from the story, right? So yeah, I don't know, this is it's a fun and interesting and challenging problem to try to solve here, and I think that we're going to come up with a good answer.
I mean, what we can certainly say is this isn't Sword Art Online, so if you die in the metaverse, you're not going to die in real life. So you can definitely take that away on this town hall.
It's a nice name drop there.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if this is alpha or not, but there's this concept that we've been working on since the very beginning that fits in with the lore, right? Which is that if you to make these social games, like if you die, then you go into the spirit realm and you're wandering around as a ghost, and you have to go and find a handful of friends to get a Ouija board and summon you back to life. Right? I think that's really fun as a concept. I'm not sure if that's actually going to make it into the game specifically, but I like this idea of, at least in the digital world, the ethereal plane, as it were, is just another place that you go, right? And Lolly had mentioned Greek mythology earlier. We have, Purgatory and Dante's Inferno and like all these other literary tools that we can pull on to influence how, like, what the rules around that might look like, right? Another one that I think is really fun is Beetlejuice. That's definitely played into an influence in some of these conversations that we've been having. But yeah, I think that this concept in general has a lot of meaning for crypto-based gaming, I think, and what it means. So
yeah, it's a wild space. It really is. But again, the narrative and the enjoyment, I think, are two things that this space is really going to start to embrace over the next 12 months, 18 months, up until we're in this next bull market. This is the time to be building. And I think this is where it's just so fascinating to seeing what's been coming out, not only in Frogland, but throughout the entire space. The builds are still building. And that's what I'm really over the moon about. Nice. That being said, I'd say, unless Lolly, do we have any other questions in the Discord?
We do. We have one more from Frog King. He said he was asking how far along we are on any other mini games or missions that we're working on, and if there's any alpha that we can share. And I think that's a good one.
So, I mean, we could probably say that we have a grand total of maybe 6-7 mini games in the pipeline, but these are going to be released out over the course of a year. So don't expect these to be cracked out anytime soon. Our focus, first and foremost, is getting Total Recall to the point of an actual public release. Because again, the way we're developing this, just for a bit of a reminder, is unusual. It's unlike how other games have been made before, whereas we are working with yourselves, who are currently the alpha testers, with us to find out what is going to make this game more fun, more enjoyable. Because the last thing we want to do is push out a Web3 game that people don't want to play. In fact, the best thing we can do is push out a Web2 game that everyone wants to play, with the added benefit that there are Web3 bonuses for those who are intrigued. And those who are intrigued can then come into a community that's going to be incredibly welcoming. There's a slightly different approach to everyone else, I think, in the space, and I think it's something we should see some success at. So if we nail this process, then we have a repeatable process that we can start implementing throughout the number of other mini games we're going to be bringing to the market. So there is stuff to come. I don't know how much more I can say, but they do cover not only mobile games, not only browser games. We have some VR content in the pipeline. We have some, of course, mobile content, and we have a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah. Let me add into that real quickly. I think it's probably worth mentioning that in deciding what types of things we're going to build, there's two major considerations for us at this point, right? Is like, so what types of things that we can make are fun and are going to attract a broad and diverse set of users, and then what sort of things can we build that, with the resources that we have available, that are going to give us the best cross section of technology, right? And so we're trying to overlay those two constraints in a sort of Venn diagram and pick the things that are right in the middle there, right? That help us to build out the infrastructure that we need in order to reach an audience, and then build things that are attractive to those audiences. And one of those, of course, is building these types of smaller play experiences that allow us to write the software that enables all of that, but also have a broad appeal to different audience types, right? So like, there's a very particular type of player style that likes something like Mortal Kombat, or say a first-person shooter versus like a Settlers of Catan or a puzzle game or things like that, right? So so we want to make sure that we're building experiences that allow us to test what the community, both present and future, is going to enjoy, and build useful idioms and patterns around those things that are going to be repeatable and reproducible in the future games that we make. I can give an example, like, we're going to have a battle loop of some type, right? Which is like probably turn-based, maybe based on something like Final Fantasy, for example. And, the way that gets put together is fairly well understood, but that's a type of mechanic that can be useful for a game like Final Fantasy. It can also be useful for, space-based, spatial-based stealth games and things like that, where you're like turn-based movement. Think of like Warhammer. But then it also has applicability to like trading card games and things like Pokemon or Magic the Gathering and things like that, right? So, as we start to push things out where these are all experiments to test which of these types of mechanics people actually like and enjoy, and then we build more of those, basically, right? So that's kind of our approach to the things that we're developing. And of course, everything's got to have frogs in it.
Goes without saying.
Right.
And I think it's might be a good point to kind of highlight too the story of it, and being able to kind of really put an emphasis on the narrative and the reason why we're doing all these things. I think is going to be really key to being able to onboard like normies or like Web 2 users who don't maybe necessarily understand why it's really cool for whatever the blockchain side of thing is. But by being able to tell a story of, you're a frog, you got abducted by aliens, you're trying to escape, and these gold coins are what's going to help give you your immortality back. Like, that's really easy to understand. You better go and fucking better go and collect all those gold coins. But if you're, and that's a much easier kind of narrative to sell and to explain to new people, as opposed to trying to say, well, like, these are these ERC-55s, and if you get these, then like you have whatever. And kind of that kind of, as soon as you start talking about blockchain, people's eyes kind of start to glaze over a little bit if they're not really interested in it. And so being able to kind of wrap this into that attractive, alluring package makes it a lot easier.
I think it's fair to say that we've spent the last year and a half building this very large kind of complicated machine that has a lot of all these moving parts, and now our primary task in front of us is to simplify that, right, and to distill that down into its base constituent parts so that people can understand it, so that it becomes accessible, and then people can have fun here as they experience this world, right? There are a few pretty good examples, I think, of like how this process goes. I think probably the one that most people are familiar with is Marvel, right? So, Disney's built this massive universe, that's video games and merch and in live experiences and movies and things like that, and it all has a way of fitting together. But you don't necessarily, when you approach that, you don't just try to drink from the fire hose and do the whole thing. You come in through like one particular property, and then as you're exposed more and more and you find that you enjoy that space, then the world opens up to you, right? That's like universal, I think, in trying to introduce people to a universe. I mean, going back to Greek mythology, it's kind of the same thing, right? When you read some of those stories, you start out in one place, and then as you go and you explore more, you're exposed to more, and then you start to get a holistic picture of everything, right?
Nice. Yeah. Lore is a hell of a lot of fun. In fact, we do have some interesting tidbits on the lore side that we'll probably save for the next town hall. But yeah, that being said, I know we're coming up to our hour here, so I'd say, do we have any final questions? Probably wrap up on the last question if there is left from the community. Otherwise, we will be in the Discord, and you can ping any one of us at any given moment in time. We're generally online most of the time. Nice.
Yeah, I think we've got all the questions from in there, and I think we're pretty close to at least one of us being awake at all times around the world now, especially with you guys farther that way.
I know, we're literally going to be opposite ends. I think we're exactly 12 hours apart for the next couple of weeks online, which is good, depending on how internet is out there. But should be a fun couple of weeks. Nice. Then, I'd like to thank each and every one of you frog holders again for bearing with us while we continue to flesh out this crazy new world. Thank you for taking part in the gameplay test. If you haven't, pick up a frog and hop on in, because again, we want to make sure this is the best game it can possibly be. And so far, we've been getting just some absolutely incredible feedback from everyone who has tried it. So I would say, on that note, jump into the holders channel, find out where the game's at, and start racking up some leaderboard scores. And on that note, I'd like to wish you all a very good Ribbit, and we look forward to seeing you all next month for our next town hall. Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye, guys.